this module we will actually be looking at a very important set of tools that is used whenever we are dealing with different types of files and trying to compare the contents of the files on a Linux system. So, one of the very basic commands that is used for comparing two different files on a Unix system is what is called as a diff command. So, if I give two arguments to the diff command file 1 and file 2, it reports the differences between the two files right up to the point where the differences are present. So, it will report the difference in the line number in which these two files are getting to be different. On the other hand, if there are no differences at all between the two given files, they are exact replicas of each other, then the diff command will not report anything as part of the output. So, if the user finds that diff is not reporting any output, the user has to interpret it as saying that the content of the two files that has actually been given to the diff command is exactly identical. Now, if I want to really compare the two directories, I could actually make use of the -r option, where I will supply the arguments of two directories that I want to differentiate to the diff command, and it will report basically all the differences in the files between the dir1 and the dir2 that has actually been supplied as arguments to the diff command. Now, if I use some very specific operations, specific options in the diff command like the -e option, it basically gives me the difference in a format which I can make use of later on with the patch command. Now, what exactly is a patch command is, if I want to sort of patch a file in some very specific lines alone among my entire file, then that is when I use the patch command. So, when I run the diff with the -e option, instead of it generating the output exactly in lines in which the content is differing between the two files, it also gives me the context of the difference in whichever line the difference is coming in. So, let us say that line number 10 is different in file 1 and file 2. When I use the -e option to diff, instead of just printing the line number 10 alone, it also prints me 3 lines before line number 10 and 3 lines after line number 10. So, essentially from line number 7 to line number 13, which is very useful for applying it with the patch command later on if I want to just update only certain portion of my file, right. So, that is again a very powerful option to the diff command, which is commonly used whenever you deal with very large source code files in which require some sort of frequent updates as patches to the individual code files. So, there are different versions, the GUI versions of the diff command that is also available, like one example is a tk-diff. So, here it gives you a graphical interface and tells you a mechanism by which it shows the differences very clearly. Here for example, if you see that you have these 3 lines added in the first file, and these 3 lines are not available in this particular second file that you have given as an argument, which has been indicated with a particular color, right. On the other hand, in the first file you do not have certain lines that are there in the second file, this has been indicated in a different color by this tool. So, basically this tool is also running the diff command, but for very interactive and very intuitive way by which the user can easily come to know the differences. The differences are actually projected in a graphical format for the user to quickly understand where the differences are in the contents between the two given files. So, another application that does something very similar is what is called as a compare, which basically tries to compare the differences and optionally merge the differences also if you explicitly ask it to merge. So, this is typically a tool that comes by default in the Fedora core distribution of the Linux OS. Now, Next command that is very commonly used when we are dealing with files and trying to understand the locations where the files are present is what is called as a find command. Now, this is a very powerful command and it is having lots of options and lots of features available inside that which could be very handy in a lot of situations. We will just take a look at a couple of examples here alone, and then if you look at for further details in the man page of this command, you will be able to understand why we are referring to this as a very powerful command. Now, if I want to basically find a file with a particular pattern, I would basically use this command saying find dot minus name and give the pattern. Now, what we are basically saying is find in this particular location. So, what is this location? Since we have mentioned it as a dot, that means I am asking it to find it in the current directory in a recursive manner, because find by default always does it recursively and we do not need to explicitly tell it with any specific option saying that you try to find it in a recursive manner. So, find from the current directory, that is the dot directory, in a recursive manner. What to find? We specified with the minus name option to the find star.pdf. So, here we are basically saying all files that are ending with the .pdf directory, try to find it in the current directory in a recursive manner. So, how many ever subdirectories are present from my current directory, go take a look and see if there are any files that are ending with .pdf, and if they are present, just list me the contents of the path name. So, not the contents, just list me the path names where those files are present from the current directory. So, it will give me the relative paths of all those files which have the extension of .pdf at its end listed down as part of this command, right. Now, take a look at the next example. Find docs minus name star.pdf minus exec xpdf open braces close braces, then there should be a backslash here followed by a semicolon, right. Now, look at this here, find docs. So, we are basically telling that in this particular example, inside this docs directory find files. What files it has to find? Minus name star.pdf. So, again as in the previous example, find all the files which are ending with .pdf, that is why it is star.pdf. So, find all the star.pdf files in the docs directory, and whenever you find a .pdf file, what should the find command do? That is basically what we are specifying with the minus exec option, right. So, minus exec xpdf. So, it is basically an instruction to the find command to say whenever you find a .pdf file, execute this particular command xpdf, right. So, xpdf, as we all know, is basically the command application that is used to open up a PDF file, right. Now, what is this open braces and the close braces brackets that you see here? The find command will automatically replace the open braces and the close braces with the path name where this particular PDF file has been found, because the xpdf command has to be given the path name in which this particular file is present, otherwise the xpdf command will fail, right. And when we run the find command, we would not know in which path it is going to be finding, because that is basically why we are running the find command itself in the first place. So, whenever it finds the .pdf file recursively inside the docs directory, for each of those .pdf files, this minus exec option will open up an xpdf command and give that particular relative path name, relative file path name for that found .pdf file, because we have given open braces and close braces here. So, that substitution of this open braces and close braces will be done automatically and replaced with the relative path name by the find command whenever it finds a particular xpdf .pdf file, right. Now, if I for example find that there are 3 .pdf files, right. So, there are 3 files, the file names which are actually ending with .pdf in all the subdirectories and the files in docs directory. Because we have run the find command in this with these options, there will be 3 xpdf executions that will happen, one each for those .pdf files. Since we have 3 PDF files, it will open up 3 xpdf application instances in which each of those PDF files will be opened up, right. Now, every time that PDF file is found by the find command, the open braces and close braces will actually replace that relative path name and then give that relative path name as an argument to the xpdf command, and then the xpdf will be getting started up, right. So, these are the 2 very common scenarios in which we use this kind of a very powerful find command, and then there are more powerful ways of using it, which we can actually take a look at by looking at the man page of this find command. So, alternatively, other than the find command, we also have the locate command with which we will be able to find the location where a particular file is available. So, that is another mechanism by which to sort of get the location where the file that has been given as an argument is available. So, now what is the difference between the find command and the locate command if both of them are really trying to find out the location of the given file name, right. Now, what locate does is, locate basically tries to find the location from a database that is actually created first time, right. Now, first I will have to have a database that is built, and whenever you give any file name, locate tries to quickly take a look at that database and sort of indexes directly into the location where that particular file will be found, and then immediately displays the location of the file, okay. Whereas find is useful whenever I dynamically insert newer files into my target directory location. It will be able to even find those files that has actually been added just a few units of time before, right. The problem with locate is that if I have added any new files into my directory in which I am trying to find any particular file, I will have to regenerate the database that is being used by the locate application before the locate command is used is successfully able to find that particular file path, right. So, but the advantage of the locate command is it is extremely fast, right. On the other hand, find will take its own time depending on how big my directory is in which I am trying to find the file, but find is very successful, is very useful in finding even the files that I have added very recently. So, both find and locate has its own advantages and disadvantages, and depending on whether we are trying to find a file which has only been added very earlier and not something which is constantly getting updated, or we are trying to find a file which is actually might be also very recently updated, the user is expected to use either the locate command or the find command appropriately, right. So, find is very slow if the directory that is being used for finding is containing a very large number of files, but the advantage with that is it is very efficient even in trying to find the files that has been recently added. On the other hand, locate is extremely fast because it is using internally a database, but the flip side is that if at all I have added any new files after the database has been generated, I will have to regenerate the database again, then only the locate command will be successful, right. So, that is basically the difference between the find command and the locate command. So, some of the other information commands that I need to use whenever I am have a requirement to find out about users is the who command will give me all the users who are logged into the system, whoami will give me my own user ID. So, as how my user ID is recognized by the system. Groups will tell me to what all groups this currently logged in user ID is belonging to. So, whoever is running the command called groups, who that particular user is belonging to which groups will be reported by this command. On the other hand, if I give a particular username as an argument to groups, it will tell me which all groups that particular user is belonging to, and finger command is actually will give me details about that particular user, and in quite a few systems for security reasons you will find that this finger command is actually disabled. So, if I have a requirement to change user from one user to another user, there is a command called su which is actually stands for switch user, but that is sort of rarely used again for a simple reason that it is not very secure to make use of this. So, if at all I need to make use of it, I say su followed by the user ID to which I want to change, right, my own user ID to that particular user ID. Henceforth, the system will be recognizing me as that particular user name which I have given as an argument. So, only thing is here, when I actually use a su command, unless and until I am a super user of the system, I will be asked to enter the password of the user to which I am trying to change the user ID to, right. So, only if I am basically successful in giving the correct password for that user, the system will allow me to change myself to be of that user, right. If I use su minus a user ID, what happens is that the entire environment, my current environment, the shell environment, will be getting changed to the environment that has actually been set for that particular user. So, in the previous module we had looked at a file called .bashrc for example, which we were discussing basically gets executed every time the shell process gets started, and we also discussed that this .bashrc file as a hidden file will be available for every user in their home directory, right. So, when we use this minus option to the su command and then specify the user ID, what is actually happens is that whatever user ID is specified here, the password for that user ID will be queried. Assuming that I give the correct password, the authentication is successful by the system for changing to this user ID. The shell that I get right now will have the .bashrc and the entire environment to be executed for this particular user ID executed, so that my current shell environment will typically reflect whatever is the environment that has been set for this particular new user ID that I am trying to change myself to, right. Now, on the other hand, if I use the su command without giving any user ID, the system will assume that you are trying to change to the root user and then becoming as a sort of a super user, and it will try to query you for the root password in this particular scenario, right. So, another command that is very useful is what is called as the wget command. So, the wget command is a sort of a command that you can use for simulating a browser functionality, where if you for example give a URL in your browser URL location, the browser actually downloads that particular content of that URL and then displays it in your web page, right. On the other hand, if you want to have a command line utility which simulates a browser, then you could actually make use of the wget command, wherein if you say wget and give a file name with the remote server name also available as part of the file name, the wget command over the net will try to download the file from that particular username, assuming that you have authenticated yourself successfully wherever required, and then will get the contents for you and then display the contents, right. So, that is basically what a wget command actually does. So, there are different ways of using the wget command which you can actually try it out over the network and then get comfortable with using these different options. So, there are some other commands that we need to be aware of from the basic Linux usage point of view is what is called as a sleep command. So, if you say sleep followed by a certain number of seconds, the system will basically sleep for that particular duration of time that you have mentioned as an argument to the sleep command without doing anything, and at the same time it will be guaranteed that during that sleep time the system will not consume any kind of a system resources like the processor or whatever it is. Then another command that is very commonly used is wc command. Wc basically stands for word count. So, if you give a file name as an argument to the wc command, it will basically display you the different data. So, it will try to display you how much of words, how much of lines, how much of characters is present in that particular file appropriately as the options that you have actually used in your command line. So, it has the capability to print the number of words, it has the capability to print the number of lines, it has the capability to print the number of characters along with the file name that you have actually given as an argument. So, in a scenario where you would want to know this kind of an information apart from just knowing the size of that file alone, then wc command comes in handy for it, right. So, BC is a command which is equivalent to your calculator program. So, you could do all kinds of basic arithmetic operations with the BC command. So, if you use the -L option to the BC command, it also helps you to do floating point arithmetic operations with the decimal values also factored in. But if the -L option is not used to the command line, it will only do integer related arithmetic operations. Then date is another command that is very handy to give the current system date. Like a normal date, it also prints the system date, time, it prints the time zone as part of its output. This is very useful and handy to be displayed when you are running shell scripts as part of the scripting to really understand when a script has actually started executing and to find out when a script has actually ended executing, the difference of which will typically give you the total time that particular script has taken. So, this is one example, and there are a lot of examples in which could typically be used for running the date command. Thank you.